This is Hannah.
This is Bailey.
This is Butters. And welcome to the Motocross Vault.
Hello, this is Tony Blazer back with another video here for the Motocross Vault. And what I'm going to do for this one is we're going to take a look back at the history of AXO Sport America. Now, AXO Sport was one of the most influential brands in the late 80s and early 90s in motocross. Style trendsetters. I'm a huge fan. As you can see, this is the original AXO stuff I had in 92. Still have the pants to go with it and a couple of different versions. Loved AXO. AXO was great. From the time that really 87, 88 until maybe 97, 98, they were like right at the top, right there with Fox Racing in terms of style and design and marketing. Star power. They had Damon Bradshaw. They had Jeff Stanton. They had great guys on the bikes, looking great in the stuff. Awesome product. This video is going to look back a little bit. The beginning of AXO. AXO before Jim Hale kind of opened AXO Sport US in the early 80s was really just a boot manufacturer, Italian-based company. And then after they got sold in the late 90s, AXO kind of went into decline, at least here in the US. The new owners really didn't have the same sense of purpose and style, I think, that Jim Hale had. And the company really hasn't been the same. It's still pretty influential. They have a fair amount of market share and mind share in Europe, but here in the U.S., very few people ride AXO anymore or wear it. They've made a few attempts to kind of, come back on a retro theme here and there, but it really just hasn't caught on. But they were an amazingly successful brand for a while, and I love their gear. Huge fan. I did an article on the history of them about 2 years ago on Pulp MX. And I thought it might be fun to go over a little bit of that here on the channel as well. Now, if you like this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, ding the little bell to be updated. If you're watching on Facebook, if you could share and like the video, I'd appreciate it. Help grow our community here. And I appreciate the feedback. If you guys like this one, I'll also probably do one on maybe Answer, JT, and some other iconic brands. So, in any case, I hope you like this. This is the history of AXO Sport America. Prior to the involvement of Jim Hale with AXO Sport, the company was a boot manufacturer. It had been started in the late 70s by an Italian gentleman by the name of Remo Berlese, who had the idea to produce high-quality Italian boots for motocross, much like Alpine Star was doing. His original idea for the brand was to name it Easy Rider, which was coincidentally the name of a famous motorcycling movie here in America with a couple of guys on a few Harleys. I don't think that probably, when you translated that over to the American market, would have gone over as well. So he decided to change the name to AXO, which was derived from the Italian word asso, which translated loosely to mean ace or winner. Now, the spelling of the word in Italian is ASSO. So again, if you translate that into the English language, you can see some possibly problematic references there. So he was probably smart to change it to a AXO spelling, which give it kind of a Greek look, give it a little exotic thing, something different. I mean, most of us didn't know. In fact, I thought AXO was AXO. I always said it like that. In fact, back in the old days, we didn't see people on TV saying the name, pronouncing it, just reading it in a magazine. So I thought you called the letters out as the initials. I didn't know it was AXO Sport for quite a long while. But at first, AXO's boots were sold under the distribution of Fox Racing and also O'Neill. They weren't really selling their own stuff. They were going through Fox, and you could actually get a version of the boots with the Fox logo on it here. You can see in this ad with Brad Lackey. Now, this original boot was pretty ugly, in my opinion, pretty terrible looking. It was certainly something to get AXO on the map, but it wasn't a huge success, I don't think, here in America at least. Now, the nice thing about this boot was it was designed to compete with, things like the Scott plastic boot and some of these other ones that had a little more plastic in them. And he did have a smart idea to combine the comfort of a leather boot like the High Point boot with the protection of like a Scott boot or like Emerald Bear or some of the Heckle, one of the other plastic boots, which were more protective but didn't give you good movement. So this original boot kind of combined both those in a nice way that I think was very innovative. Now, over the years, they did make a few updates to this design, and eventually AXO started to gain a little traction in the marketplace. Here in 1982, you see AXO Sport launches the first of their real boot successes, the new Malheur Boot. Now, this boot was named for Andre Malheur, who was a 500 world champion factory Honda star, and this was a boot that combined some of the early ideas of the first design, meaning like a leather and plastic construction, with much better styling. The boot was pretty advanced, had Velcro closures, which, you know, today we think is pretty silly, but this was pretty high-tech stuff. In the early 80s, it was nice, way easier than dealing with the early boots where you had 40 buckles to buckle. Had a quick lace system, quick draw system inside, lots of plastic protection throughout. You can kind of see the DNA of a modern boot right here. It certainly bears more of a resemblance to something you'd see now than the first generation one, which looked more like something you'd see on the, you know, like a stormtrooper in Star Wars. This is like I said, a good-looking boot. The boot is still being sold through several channels at the time. You still could get it through O'Neill, still could get it through Fox. At this point, AXO was, again, just a boot manufacturer and being distributed through others. They weren't really focusing on their own brand yet. That wouldn't come, as far as the gear end of it, until the introduction of Jim Hale. Now, at the time, Jim Hale was actually an employee of O'Neill. He was a sales rep for the company, and O'Neill had a affiliation with AXO Sport as a distributor of their boots. Now, Jim Hale was a former pro motocrosser. He had ridden in the 70s. Here he is on his CR125. And initially, Jim, in 1983, had reached out to Yoko of Finland, which was a manufacturer of gear in its own right. Never a huge fan of Yoko. I always thought it was kind of weird, but at the time, I guess it made sense for him to try and reach out to them and see if they would be interested in partnering with him. Now, initially, Yoko rebuffed Jim, but that didn't let him deter him, and eventually he ended up hooking up with Berlese over at AXO Sport, and he had basically proposed that the two partner, and Jim would start a new company here in the United States, AXO Sport America, or AXO Sport America. See, I did it right there, the AXO, AXO Sport America, and that would basically allow AXO Sport to both grow their business by offering a wider portfolio other than just boots, and also have somebody here in the U.S. market that could focus on trying to grow the business for them. Because, again, AXO at the time was a very European country, Italian company, and it wasn't always easy to get into the American market. Clearly, even today, American taste is very different than what you see in Europe. You see some of the stuff from Europe always, makes a lot of us here in the U.S. scratch our head a little bit. So it was important for both brands there, kind of a strategic partnership to grow AXO over and above just being a manufacturer of essentially boots. After the formation of AXO Sport America in 1984, the all-new company really hit the ground running. They had a lineup of all new and very innovative products that really put the new brand on the map. The first of these was the new AXO Sport Super Belt. Now, if you look at this now, it certainly seems a little bit odd. Most of us don't wear kidney belts. Really don't see anybody wearing it anymore. But in the 70s and 80s, kidney belts were common. Suspension was much worse then. We were all getting the crap beat out of us by our crappy shocks. So this helped keep your insides from getting ruptured into the bumps, help with the back support. Now, prior to the AXO Sport Kidney Super Belt here, Gold Belt was probably the most common one, and it was like a nylon belt with a little bit of some structural ribbing in the back to give you a little bit of support, but it wasn't nearly as stiff as this injected molded plastic. This plastic really was the innovation that set the Super Belt apart and really put AXO Sport on the map. You can get it in different colors. It was really, really cool and a huge hit for the brand. They followed that up with an all-new replacement to the Malheur Boot, which was the Rinaldi boot. This boot was made with an all-new set of materials that was 2 pounds lighter than the original one. Way more comfortable to wear. The styling is certainly cleaner. This is a good-looking boot. They replaced the all-leather construction with a new material called Fiberlite, which, like I said, shaved a little bit of weight off of it. It was durable and light, and gave the basically a stiffer feel. Now, some people didn't like it because it didn't break in as easily as leather, but it was very durable. After the Malheur boot, after the Rinaldi boot, the next big hit for AXO Sport was the Series 29 glove. Now, much like the Super Belt, the real key to the success of this was the injected molded top of the glove. Again, this thing looks completely anachronistic today. Now, gloves are almost a joke. There's not really any protection on them at all. It's kind of crazy how much protection we had in the 70s and 80s here. This thing could take a stone and would rebuff it easily. I had a set of these gloves, loved them. The only beef was a lot of these gloves, if you ever washed them, they the material they used in the palm would get hard and crinkly like leather. It just didn't hold up well if you washed it. But other than that, these were awesome gloves. Like I said, I had a couple sets of them, loved them. They were a huge hit for AXO, and they'd actually started a trend. You'll see JT Racing also introduced a glove kind of similar to the Series 29. It became just a huge hit for the brand. Now, gear-wise here, this early pants and jerseys in 85, 84, not great. They're kind of boring. There's nothing interesting or inspired about the styling. They did get Yoko to build this gear for them initially, but the styling itself, like they're still kind of trying to find their way. Other than the plastic stuff, as far as the kidney belt and gloves and stuff, the early AXO stuff's pretty boring here in the mid 80s, but better days were ahead for sure. In 1986, AXO introduced its third big hit in a row, the all-new Series 139 Turbo Boot. Now, this boot was a tremendous success. It was the replacement to the Rinaldi boot, and it came in significantly less expensive. The original Rinaldi, which was clocked in at $179, this new Turbo came in at $139, which, as I said, is a pretty big discount. The boot itself was lighter. It came in with a top grain leather construction with an improved version of that Fiberlight, so it was a little easier to break in. They used that in strategic areas. The styling was a little cleaned up. I love this boot. It was a good looking boot. And like I said, the price was, fairly reasonable. Today, that'd probably be the equivalent of, I don't know, $220 or something. But it's pretty amazing how some things haven't. Gear hasn't really gone up in cost. Boots have kind of kept pace with the inflation. But even in 1986, those Series 29 gloves were $30, basically the same as you'd pay today. Now, there was a second boot in the all-new lineup for 1986. It was this new Air boot. Now, over the years, several manufacturers have tried to do some version of a air-cooled boot, some kind of ventilation. Alpine Stars did one as well. None of them have really caught on. I never had this boot. I always thought it looked like a kind of a gimmick. I always imagined the first time you went through a mud puddle, you'd clog the damn thing up with water, and then I don't know how the hell you'd get it out. But I also have my doubts when you're wearing a thick sock like you'd wear riding socks, how you'd feel any ventilation through there. I never can feel it in the helmet either. So to me, it struck me as a gimmick. It's also very expensive at $229. It's a pretty pricey boot as well. It only lasted a couple years, so I don't imagine very many people bought it. Now, the gear for 1986 here is definitely better. I don't really love this first generation logo. This is a kind of a plain logo. They hadn't really stylized it yet, but I do like the colors this year. They added some really nice colors. For 1986, you have this new rose color, which is like that purpley pink color. Some neons. You can see some early neon orange, neon green. Some really nice color combos, and it was kind of sprucing things up way more bold than the 1985 offerings. Now, you can see here the updated AXO logo did make its way to the jerseys. The new Super AXO jerseys have the kind of italicized logo that I really like this design. I don't know why the pants didn't have it, so it's kind of weird. You have the new logo on the shirt, but the pants are still using the old one. Maybe they had a bunch of leftover logos to be sewn on over in Finland. But in any case, I do like these new Super AXO and Super AXO Plus jerseys. They're really good looking, particularly in that rose color, which I do really like even today. 1987 here is where AXO Sport really starts to turn up the heat on the competition. They have some minor updates to some of the gear and some major updates to other stuff. Introduced some new products. Really kind of made some strides in terms of overall look and the design of the gear as well. The 95 series pants here finally get the updated logo, so the pants match the jersey, and I think that logo is like just a tenfold improvement over the old one. It's a minor thing, really, but if you look at the old pants versus the new one, it really makes a difference in the way they look. Now, in addition to the updated 95 pants, there was an all-new 135 series as well for 1987 that was built by Yoko in Finland. Really good-looking pants. These new pants were produced in a twill pattern using a new material that AXO called Hydronyl 520, whatever the hell that is. It was super shiny, shimmery, had a really interesting look to it, very unique, really cool look. They had some stretch panels built into the front and sides here. You can see where they were more comfortable to wear. This, to me, is the first pants that I really kind of took notice of AXO and said, wow, that is really cool and different. Love the look of them. Like I said, they were super shiny. We all loved neon colors in the 80s, and these pants certainly popped. They looked even better in person than they do here. I have a set of Answer ones with a very similar fabric on them even now. And these suckers, man, they like glow in the dark. It's insane how bright they are even now, 30 years later. Really cool pants. The jerseys were slightly updated for 1987, not a real difference. Like I said, they were the ones that really had the new look in 86, and they just carried it over for some minor changes here. It's still a good looking jersey though, I like it. And you can tell, look at the collars though, holy crap. I still to this day, if you put these old jerseys on, I don't know how we rode in them because they're like sweatshirts. You have like a turtleneck collar, you got terry cuffs. This stuff is so heavy and hot, and it's pretty crazy that we were able to not die of heat stroke back then. Now, on the minor side, the Turbo 139 boots got a minor update here with some new limited edition colors. So now you could get it in blue or red, and there was actually a Tough Racing version as well, which came in a pretty crazy color combo, too, if you wanted your boots to be a little more bold. There's a new chest protector, which I never really liked this thing that much. The SC2, it was kind of, to me, like kind of a Roost 2 or JT knockoff, not particularly great looking. I always thought it was kind of lame. The Series 29 gloves were back for this year, and they had a new companion as well, the all-new Series 40. Now, the Series 40 here you'll see has a little less plastic on it. They tried to build a little more vents into the top of it. I'm not so sure about this part where it protects your wrist. I'm sure that probably was not great in terms of movement. I never actually rode with these. I had the 29s. I never had these Series 40s. I always thought they were just, not that great. You will say something interesting, though. In the early 90s, you saw a lot of gloves with like a biofoam instead of this plastic. And you can see this early ones using like biofoam for the tip of your digits to give a little more protection. Again, doesn't vent very well, which is probably why, nowadays you see everybody with such minimal stuff. There's hardly anything to the gloves now, but this was, pretty par for the course in the late 80s. I don't think these ever caught on to the extent the 29s did. The 29s lived on for several more years. The 40s, I don't think were ever as much of a success, quite frankly. In 1988, the most important news in terms of AXO Sport was actually probably not any particular product, but a rider signing. In a very cool move, they ended up getting Jeff Ward, who was the 1987 Supercross champion, to switch over to AXO Sport from Sinisalo for his boots and belt. Now, this is an interesting situation because at the time, Sinisalo was partnered with Jim Hale as the American marketer and distributor of Sinisalo products. So there was a little bit of some synergy there. And AXO Sport came out with an all-new boot for 1988 that replaced the popular 139 Turbo with a new Turbo Plus, which offered a much sleeker design. Had some innovations like the buckles were made of plastic instead of leather. Gave it a little more, secure form of. They had like a cam lock buckle to keep it from coming undone. Still used Velcro for the uppers and still had like a quick lace system inside. So it wasn't completely different than the last one, but definitely a better looking boot. This boot, was turned out to be even more popular than the original 139. And it came in several colors, including this really great selection of Tough Racing. Tough Racing partnered with AXO Sport at the time and had some really cool combinations of stuff. So you get your new Turbo Plus boots in all manner of insane colors, including like neon yellow and green and such. Now, Jeff Ward also was contracted to wear the new redesigned AXO Super Belt 2, which was still a plastic design similar to the old one, but a little more sleek, a little more comfortable. This was really the main thing. The rest of the gear for 88 wasn't too much changed, but it was definitely a high-profile sign for AXO Sport. Jeff Ward was by far the highest-profile rider they had in the gear up to this point. In 87, they had Jeff Leask, who was factory Yamaha, but certainly not a top tier in terms of popularity rider here in the U.S. He wasn't on the level of like a Rick Johnson or Jeff Ward, certainly. So this was a very important signing for AXO and really helped get the name out there and get their products on the cover of magazines and such. By 1989, AXO Sport was really firing on all cylinders, and they had some great stuff on tap. First up was the all-new 125 ST pants, one of my all-time favorite AXO designs, one of my favorite pants of the 80s for sure. It had that similar Takacell nylon look with kind of that shimmery look, but they added a pinstripe to it, and I always thought that was very cool at the time. I thought it was a really, really neat looking pant. I love this one with the aqua and the pink on the far right. Just a great looking design, really good looking stuff overall. This year they also got some really good looking jerseys as well, including an all-new Type S jersey that I really loved. The one here on the second to the left goes great with those same pants I love. The design was a little more I don't know, cartoony, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. I'm not sure. The font's certainly different. The older design here on the far left here has much more of an understated design to it. This new one is a more pastel, brighter, just a fresher take on it. I really liked it at the time. Still think it looks good now. For 89, we also have the last year for the Series 29 gloves. These gloves have been on the market for 5 years at that point. Were one of AXO Sport's best-selling products of all time at that point, and it was probably a bold move to retire it, but they ended up retiring it with this all-new Series 36 glove, replacing it. Clearly a little bit of a more updated design to the 29. Same basic idea, still a lot of plastic on it. I think it's a little bit more attractive probably than the 40 glove. Doesn't have that fussy nonsense on the wrist, but in general, I think the heyday of these gloves were kind of passing at this point. We were already going to like more biofoam or foam stuff on the back, and these hard plastic injected molded things were kind of going away. Now for 89, AXO Sport also offered a limited edition granite gear, which was pretty clean. Certainly understated by 89 standards. If you look at what JT was doing and what Fox Racing was doing with the zebra stripes and polka dots and such, this limited edition stuff's pretty tame by comparison. Now they did have a really cool looking lineup of Turbo Plus boots for 1989. Through their partnership with Tough Racing and also actually Honda, they offered several different versions of the AXO Turbo. You could get them here in the neon green, the neon yellow, the really cool neon orange and blue. I love that combo. The granite one from the stuff we were talking about a moment ago. Now, Honda did, as I said, partner with AXO in 1989 to offer a TX10 line of gear, which actually some of the Honda riders were forced to ride in 89. They actually had two versions. One was produced from Answer Racing, another one was from AXO Sport, and this TX10 boot and the gear was, it was okay looking. It's not great. I mean, the boot's probably the best looking part of the gear. The rest of it's pretty mediocre at best. There was also a version here with Mike LaRocco that was made for Yamaha. Early days of that stuff, before this, you saw all the gear companies putting the name of the company on the pants, but the manufacturer started kind of pushing back on that and forcing the gear companies to take the logos off unless they were paying a licensing fee. So you end up with a manufacturer like AXO Sport with an exclusive contract, or Fox later in the 90s, to produce the gear for the manufacturer named stuff. So it's kind of lame in some ways, because I always thought it was cool when you get Suzuki on your pants, or Honda or Yamaha. So now you're kind of limited to one brand if you want that, and a lot of times it's not always the best looking stuff. But that was kind of like one of those things that started happening in the late 80s. Now for 1990, AXO Sport was back with a couple of major new product announcements and some minor refinements to some other of their products. First up was an all-new boot for 1990. This was the Turbo Rc boot. Now, I had this boot. I had it in the gray and pink. Really great boot. Now, it did address a few of the issues of the earlier Turbo boot. One of the problems with the early one was very short. This new boot was an inch taller, so it gave you a lot better calf protection. There was more plastic protection. Got rid of the Velcro on the top. Like I said, Velcro was a big thing in the 80s, but I guess they kind of started realizing that Velcro is probably not the most secure way to latch your boot up if you wanted protection there. So this had this new buckles on the bottom and like these little cam lever ratchet things on top. Now, I had a couple of these boots, like I said, and sometimes the buckles were a problem, and these upper ones would give you an issue. But overall, these were great boots. They were really, really popular. AXO sold a ton of these darn things. They came in several colors, so you get them in black and white and red, as well as some really, really bold versions from Tough Racing. Again, Tough offered some really crazy color combos if you're into that sort of thing, and of course, being the 90s, I definitely was. AXO's second new major product launch for 1990 was the all-new Pentagon chest protector. Now, this was a really interesting design in that the name was derived from the 5 different configurations here you could put it into. You could use it just as a roost protector. You could kind of swap the stuff out. It had little pins that you could take in and out and change things around. It was, I mean, for me personally, this first version I thought was only okay looking. It only came in white with a couple different accent colors. I didn't think it was a particularly elegant design, but a year later than this, they would add a lot more colors that really, really, to me, helped the overall aesthetic. But certainly this was a very popular chest protector at the time. I thought it was much more interesting, and I do like it way better than the earlier SC1 offering, or SC2 I guess it was, which I thought was kind of a boring derivative design. This was definitely different. Had the biofoam padding inside and hard plastic shell. And this is in the days, of course, when people would wear the chest protector outside of their jersey. Didn't do the whole underprotector thing as much back then. As you can see here, it does come in a couple of color combos, but nothing super, particularly bold. On the pants side, the 125 ST got an update to add Kevlar here to the inner knee and a few new color combos. I love the looks of this pant, really great looking. It has this tactile fabric and kind of a neat satin look. It's a little different than the Hydronil. I love the pinstripes built into these pants. I always thought that was super cool. And these injected molded logos are really, really nice. The Kevlar was a really great addition. Back in the 80s, you know, it had leather innards, actually the 70s too for that matter. But the leather innards could allow you still to get burned on the inside of your knee, especially if you had a motorcycle that didn't have like a low boy pipe. I remember my 87 CR was notorious for roasting my calf, and the Kevlar was much more heat resistant and much less likely to get you burned if you were squeezing the bike with your legs like you're supposed to. I love these pants, good looking pants. They still had the 135s as well. Didn't really like these quite as well. The 125s were definitely my favorite pant design this year. There was also an all-new jersey for 1990, which at this point jerseys were still all cotton in design. This new Comp 2 jersey, I think, was a really, really good-looking design overall. I love the graphics on it. You can see they have a little bit of the granite from the previous year built into the logo. But some new designs. I love the color combos. There's several different ones. I like this aqua with the orange and pink. There's also a really nice green and pink and a couple different pink. Pretty much pinks and pretty much all of them. Of course, it's the 90s. So good looking jersey. I liked it overall for sure. One little weird thing about this, if you notice, there's like a umlaut on the AXO Sport. In 90, there's just 1 year for this. They put the umlauts over the O's. Which is almost kind of like a Scandinavian or German thing, and AXO was actually an Italian company being distributed by Americans, so I'm not sure why they did that. It seemed like a strange idea, but they kind of dropped it after this year, so I guess somebody pointed out that it was a strange choice. Either way, good looking jersey. For 1990, the TX10 line was back as well. They still had Honda stuff. I really don't like this design. It's kind of weird. I hate the wraparound logo. AXO would do this again in, I think, 93, 94. They did a wraparound logo in a limited edition pant. And O'Neill Racing was doing this around the same time, maybe just a little bit after this. I just always thought that was a strange look. Didn't really care for it. Here's Jimmy Button with the TX10. He was a support rider for Honda that year. Definitely not my favorite design overall. There is a special limited edition run this year. Unlike the Granite, they did an earthquake gear. Eric Kehoe was the kind of really probably their biggest name rider at this point. Eric had been released by Suzuki that year before. He was a factory Suzuki rider through most of the 80s, and he was a privateer pro circuit Honda in 1990 here. And AXO Sport, like I said, they hadn't really other than like having Jeff Ford in their boots, they really didn't have much in the way of high-profile riders in 90. So Eric was their biggest guy, and they had this earthquake gear. Kind of interesting. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's, you know, kind of strange. You see the logo's been kind of shaken apart. Obviously the earthquake theme, and they had kind of a weird brick design in the back, which I'm not sure what that has to do with an earthquake, but I guess you could get this in 1990 if you're looking to have it look a little different, I guess. The Series 36 gloves were back in the lineup for 1990, and they were also available this year in some really bold colors from Tough Racing to match your crazy boots and your crazy gear. I don't know what the affiliation was with Tough, but they seem to always have the hookup with some really cool stuff from AXO, so maybe they had some kind of a hookup with Jim Hale, I'm not sure. Now, one interesting thing is you'll notice these new gloves, these new Series 21s, which were actually available with the limited edition Granite stuff the year before, has gotten away from the plastic and went with like a foam backing. Now, I actually had these gloves. I had the ones in the upper left here. They were really nice gloves. I liked them. They were more comfortable than like the 29s, the 36 stuff with the plastic. This is more like the glove you'd see used through most of the 90s. Pretty much everybody else would kind of go away from the plastic heavy duty stuff to go with a little lighter weight stuff like this biofoam or just plain old foam backing here. So this is more the template for what you'd see going forward as we kind of phased away from the heavy duty plastic back stuff. The 91 season was a huge one for AXO Sport, mainly for one reason: the hiring of Damon Bradshaw away from Fox Racing. Damon moved over to AXO Sport in 91, and that really showed a major push by the brand to get some star power. The other side kind of benefit was they got quite a bit of it through the TX10 line. In 1991, Jeff Stanton was actually still riding in the TX10, which was Honda line gear. And the first half of the season, he ran the Answer version. In the second half here, he switched over to the AXO Sport version. Now, of course, you can debate which one you like better, but it was definitely another high-profile rider, the Supercross champ, in AXO Sport, which was certainly a great win for them. I love this 91 gear. There's some really great stuff this year. The Pentagon chest protector was back with some really cool color combos. They also had Jeremy Mcgrath and Steve Lamson and Brian Swink and Jeremy Buell in AXO Sport this year because AXO was contracted to outfit the Peak Honda team, which was Pro Circuit's new Honda satellite team. This first year here, I love this gear. It's really, really cool looking. This is where you first start seeing also gel prints, which was a all-over color treatment you could put on the jerseys that resulted in a much more vibrant look overall. They really, really popped. All these gel prints were really cool. I had the pink and yellow version. Loved it. It was a sweater. It's a damn sweatshirt, basically. The cuffs and the collar were real high, turtleneck, and it didn't breathe with the damn. But, man, the color was just so vibrant. When the gel printing process really made this fabric super, super thick, and it just didn't, like I said, just didn't breathe. But it looked great. To go with the new gel print, you had some Mission Control pants, which I really didn't love the Mission Control this year. They were kind of strange, had these kind of, I don't know, craters or, I don't know, splats all over them, kind of a weird look. But the ST pants were back, the 125 STs were back with that signature AXO look and some great new colors. I really dug the aqua green pink. My best buddy Jamie had this set. Really good looking pants. I also love the new Royal and Rhodamine. I love that color. It's really kind of a pretty color. It's a deep, deep blue, and the pink really popped. I just love all these 90s colors. Of all of them, though, my favorite, though, is probably this one here with the black and the pink and the yellow, which was designed to go with that pink and yellow gel print I had. I just thought that was a super, super sharp look. Really popped. I love these injection molded logos with the little pink outline. Just a really good looking pant. Love these things, and they're super durable too. I actually had the 92 versions of these, and I wore them straight through. But the material they were made of was really tough nylon. Love the construction, real high quality stuff for sure. Now, if you were not into sweating your balls off in 1991, you could also get these all cotton comp 3 jerseys. Didn't really love the looks of these things. I thought they're okay. I much prefer the gel print, although certainly these are more comfortable to wear. They still had the ridiculous like terry cloth collars and such, but definitely a cooler overall design. And you could actually get this in a HRC Honda look as well if you wanted to go with the Jeff Stanton look. I don't love the HRC stuff this year. They got away from the TX10, calling it TX10 on the AXO side, which is probably a good idea. TX10 was not a really loved brand, but it is, overall pretty clean design. Not my favorite. 92 stuff I think is way better. Overall, this 91 lineup is really great. Super colorful, great overall look. The chest protectors here were cool. The Mission Control pants, while not my favorite, were certainly very popular. A lot of people love them. And the gel prints really popped. It's just a really important year for AXO, and you could tell that they were really firing on all cylinders in 91. After a phenomenal 1991, AXO Sport was back for 92 with an even better lineup. For my money, this is the best all-time line of gear, period. And I love Fox, I love Answer, I love all the other brands, but at least in my opinion, I don't love any single year of gear as much as I do this 92 AXO line. I had these orange and rhodamine ones here at the lower left, these new 131 pants. As you can see, they made a lot of changes, little subtle things. The pinstripe is still there, but now the little pinstripe says AXO. Every one of those there's little AXOs embossed into it or stitched into it. It was really awesome. The Biofoam logo now is on the leg, has like a padded Biofoam replacing that injection molded thing, and it's color coded to the different brands. The different colors. Love this purple and green. All of it is great looking. There was a redesigned gel print. The one I was wearing in the opening there, I had, like I said, the orange one. My buddy had the green one. Just a phenomenal, phenomenal look. I love the looks of these. Yes, they were hot. Yes, they didn't breathe with a dam. Not particularly comfortable, but they looked phenomenal. Love all of these gears. I love the look of all of it. There was an all-new jersey for 1992. It's called the Aqua, and this was kind of like a reaction, I suppose, to the fact that people were dying of heat stroke in the gel print. So this new Aqua jersey, and I have this one. I have the orange version here in the middle. It breathed much better. It's not nearly as good if you put it on now. It's not like a modern synthetic jersey, which basically feels like you're wearing nothing. But compared to like the cotton of the time or the really heavy gel print stuff, way, way, way better. It had like a moisture wicking material to it. It was a cool jersey. I love the looks of it. Still looks great now in my opinion. Really phenomenal look. There was an all-new boot this year. They replaced the original Turbo RC with a Turbo RC2 here. And that redesigned the buckle system. You'll notice there's not a ratchet on the top. Now it has 4 full buckles, which was a little bit better and probably more secure. I was finding the ratchets kind of were kind of persnickety on mine. They also added, you have Kevlar here on the inside of the boot now. There was a version of 91 that added a little bit of Kevlar, but this RC2 has it on the inside to help keep your leg from getting roasted. These were phenomenal boots. I had a set of these as well. I had the ones that the purple and pink version that went with my orange and purple and pink and everything else. It was the 90s after all. I still have these boots as well. They're still in one piece, a little bit worse for the wear, but I still have them in my garage. As you can tell, I love all this stuff. I still kept it after all these years. The Pentagon chest protector was back for 1992 with some really good looking replica models like this Jeff Ward one here. I love it. Really makes a big difference having the accented colors. Like I said, the basic design is kind of plain. This thing's very squared off and not that inspired, but when you have the colors and the different decals and the different biofoam accents, it really kind of makes these pop. I love the Bradshaw version here. The Rc4 replica here in the lower left is less interesting to me. It's not as bright of colors. I'm a big fan of the pink and the yellow and all that contrast. The Jeff Stanton replica, really boring, just like Jeff Stanton, so that's perfect. Black and blue is probably perfect for him. The solid color ones, as I said, they don't really interest me as much. It is better than the first year when they were just all white. So you could get some different colors here. You could go bold. And the cool part was you could interchange all these and kind of make your own thing. But definitely a good-looking chest protector now, and way better than it was when it was introduced, in my opinion. For 1992, the AXO Sport HRC gear was back. And interestingly, the TX10 line was gone, at least in name, and there was no Answer version. This is the first year in a while where there's just AXO Sport has the Honda gear, and I love this stuff. It's really good looking. You're going to hear me telling me how much I love this stuff a lot. I'm afraid I'm probably being redundant there, but this is great looking stuff. I had this Comp 4 jersey here in a t-shirt. They made a t-shirt with the Stanton on the back with a big number 2 and the AXO Sport kind of cartoony logo on the front. Loved it. Loved this purple and pink, and it's very 90s, very of the time, and I just thought it looked great. I didn't love this second version, which is kind of the white and blue as much, but both of it was good looking stuff. Way better looking than like the TX10 Answer stuff and AXO Sport had done a couple years earlier. Huge improvement, and Stanton looked good in it. Like I said, you had Bradshaw and Stanton and AXO Sport in 1992, and that was a pretty big coup for the brand. Fox had lost Bradshaw, and they kind of in 92 were a little bit on the ropes as far as sponsorship. I think Pete Fox had been a little bit disenchanted by Bradshaw leaving, and they weren't really feeling like they were getting their money out of spending all that big money on high-profile riders, only having to leave and kind of jump ship after sponsoring them for years. So they were really not pushing it too much at the top level. They had, I'm trying to think, maybe Ray Soma was their top rider in 92. It was kind of weird. And maybe, an amateur like Robbie Raynard. But they had lost guys like Jeff Metasevic to RS Tai Chi, and Bradshaw, of course, to AXO Sport. Just kind of a weird era there. And AXO was really ascending in 1992 for sure. As if having Stanton and Bradshaw wasn't enough, they had Jeremy Mcgrath under the AXO Sport 10 in 1992 as well through their affiliation with Mitch Payton's Peak Pro Circuit team. You had Buddy Antonez here on the right, Jeremy in the Peak gear. As you can see, they went to a gel print design this year. The new Peak jersey probably didn't breathe as well as the cotton one the year before, but I actually think it looks better. I actually had this orange and blue stuff here that Buddy's wearing. I really loved it. It was good looking stuff. Went well with my orange AXO Sport pants. I actually think I prefer the pants in 91, maybe a little bit over these white Splitfire ones, but they're both good-looking outfits. And you know that Pro Circuit and AXO Sport sold a ton of these outfits. I so much wanted my CR125 to have that blue look. I really wanted the blue tank from 91. I thought it was awesome, but back then, you know, it was kind of these things where you'd have to paint your tank and it'd last a week. So it wasn't as easy to make a custom bike as it is today. Good looking stuff for sure. Now, the last thing I want to mention here for 92 is AXO Sport's all-new RX2 helmet. This was the first year that AXO Sport sold the helmet under their own name, and it's a Kevlar helmet, which is pretty trick stuff, like I said, in 92. All the stuff, they had Kevlar. The boots had Kevlar, and the knee pads, the Kevlar was like the big buzzword then. So they had some new helmets. I never had one of these, but they were decent-looking helmets. Later on, it was kind of interesting. You'd see guys like Kevin Windham running No Fear gear, but wearing an AXO Sport helmet. So I'm pretty sure they sold a ton of these things in the 90s. Either way, the gear was on fire in 92. All of the stuff, the new gloves, the kids' gear, everything was just great this year. Awesome, awesome year for AXO Sport. For 1993, Bradshaw and Stanton were back in AXO Sport with some all-new gear. Now, some of these designs I liked better, some of them I didn't. They were certainly colorful this year. The pants still looked great. They had an all-new Dymax jersey, which was kind of like the replacement for the gel print the year before. I have this yellow one here on the left. It's okay. I really don't like it as well as my 92 stuff. The blue one here on the right, actually I prefer that color combo. The new Comp 4 jersey you can see is very colorful, very cartoony. Some people like that cartoony look, some didn't. I do love those pants though, with the orange and the blue and the green. It's got pink. It's, oh god, I love all the color. 90s was awesome. Now this was a tough year for Bradshaw. He was coming off a brutal defeat in Supercross. He had hurt his knee, blown out his ACL in a crash at Redbud the week before the LA Coliseum race, and raced that race injured. Ended up not being able to come through for the title. So Bradshaw lost, but that was Stanton's gain. Stanton ended up winning the Supercross title and the outdoor title in 92. So AXO Sport had the #1 plate again on their bikes. Now, Mcgrath had moved to Cinesalo, so he was no longer on the team. They did still have Splitfire under the tent, although it was now a Kawasaki team, with Jimmy Gaddis being probably the top rider that year for Splitfire. Now, this new gear, like I said, it's kind of a different take on a lot of the stuff they did. The pants weren't a lot different, but the jerseys certainly had a different design. As I said earlier, I'm really not a huge fan of the Dymax design. I do think it looks a little better in some of the other color combos here. The orange and yellow just maybe stands out a bit too much, even though, yeah, I do have that jersey. But in hindsight, maybe one of these other colors would have been a better choice. The blue is nice. The red is kind of subtle. I know a lot of people love this. It's just not really my cup of tea. Like I said, the pants weren't really much different. They just added a few different color combos for 92. I'm sorry, for 93. Now, the Pentagon was back with some new decals. Basically, that's the only real difference. A few different color combos. They mix it up a little bit here and there. But basic chest protector is the same with some new decals. The Rc3 Boots were back. Not a lot of change there. There was a new glove called the Padlock glove, which had like this sticky rubberized material on the bottom of it. I had a set. I gotta be honest, I don't remember much about it. I don't think it made too huge of an impact. The Axis kidney belt was new. It had like a double hinge to it, and some new colors here for 93. It was a good looking belt. Like I said, by this time, I think kidney belts are already kind of falling out of style. A lot of people weren't running them anymore. It's kind of weird how that just kind of disappeared. The kidney belts day had come and gone. Now, there was an all-new design for the Aqua Tour jersey for 93, and this I actually do really like. I like the design of these. They're good-looking jerseys overall. The 92, I think, was a really good one, but the 93 is, I don't know, maybe a little less cluttered. It's hard to say which one is better, but overall, they're both good-looking. I would be happy with either one for sure. For 1994, AXO Sport was back with a potpourri of new colors and combinations on their jerseys, some really bold stuff. One of the biggest downers, though, was the absence of their star rider, Damon Bradshaw. You can see him here, number 9 in this ad from late 93. You'll see they have a little question mark next to his name because he wasn't going to ride this year in 94. At the end of the 93 season, he had retired, citing burnout, which was a huge shock. I was a huge Bradshaw fan. He was my favorite rider, and I was so bummed. He had just signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Yamaha and had a real tough year after coming back from knee surgery. He actually won a couple of races in '93, you forget about it, but Mcgrath so dominated that series that Bradshaw was known more for his tantrums that year. He really seemed like he was surly and just pissed at the world on interviews on the podium and stuff, and it was clear he wasn't having a good time. A lot of that was probably due to him having got a taste of the good life, so to speak, in the fall of '92 when he was getting his knee rehabbed. Got a little time away from the races with his new girlfriend and just decided that he wasn't really down for the grind anymore. So for '94, their top rider in the AXO Sport lineup was Jeff Stanton, who was number 5. He had lost out the Supercross title as well to Jeremy Mcgrath, who was on Sinisalo here in '94. Other than Stanton, the biggest rider certainly in the AXO Sport stable would have been the team Splitfire team, which was Pedro Gonzalez, Ryan Hughes, Jamie Dobb, and Jimmy Gaddis. Now, the Pro Circuit team did have a pretty good year that year, but they weren't quite as successful as they'd been the year before. And Eric, yes, some other guys like Eric Kehoe still on the team. They were, he was riding for I think Honda Troy in '94. Young guys like Kevin Windham, up and coming kids who actually kind of came out pretty strong that year in '94 as well, and shocked a lot of people at High Point, leading a lot of the race. So this year the gear was certainly more colorful. They added a whole lot of just crazy designs. Probably par for the course of the '90s. I love the bold colors. I don't know that I like it better than '92. '92 is still my favorite. It's maybe a little less crazy. The designs are so over the top here in '94 that it's kind of a love it or hate it thing, but it was certainly colorful, and I know a lot of people really dig it. For my money, at least, this design of this new Dymax 3 is a little too cartoony. I do love the colors. Like I said, the colors pop this year. They are extremely bold. The font and the design reminds me of like the Powder Puff Girls or something. It's maybe a little bit much, but overall they are good looking stuff. Now I will say I do, as I said, really love the colors of this year. This red with the yellow AXO logo and the purple outline is really a very cool color combo. This was, by far my favorite of this year. The yellow combination this year is really good looking too. It's just, like I said, other than the cartoony part, I love the colors. I'm a big fan of the bright colors, and AXO certainly was very bright in '94, as I said. In addition to some very bold colors and a new cartoony style graphic on the back of the pants here, kind of reminds me of something from Samurai Jack or something. The new 12-panel pants. Got some new stretch stuff. It took its name from all the different stretch material panels in it. As you can see, the knee there is got several pieces of individual stretch material to make them more comfortable if you're wearing knee braces or something, so it wasn't much binding. This is a really important thing because in the '90s, knee braces became much more common than they had been earlier, and people started needing pants to be a little less tight in the knee, a little more give there, because you put those bulky things on, and pants from the '80s, there's not a lot of room to breathe there. So these new pants started having more stretch panels built into them, a little more comfort articulation there. So there was some good looking stuff for this year. It kept the same AXO Sport pinstriping. It's a little more wavy though in these, and the more of a cartoony style, I guess. It gives it a little different look. Overall, it was definitely the signature AXO Sport look, but with a little different twist. As in previous years, you could still get your AXO Sport gear in these cool Pro Circuit color combos. Not a big fan of the hideous cotton jersey on the top, but all these gel prints are good looking. I never had the Splitfire one. I didn't have a Kawasaki at the time, but the green and purple, orange and yellow and pink, all of them are really good looking color combos. I like them quite a bit. Like I said, I had the orange and purple version here. Good looking jersey. Sweat box to be sure, but definitely handsome at least. With the retirement of Jeff Stanton at the end of the '94 season, AXO Sport had to refocus their sponsorship dollars towards a new rider, and that rider would be Factory Suzuki's Damon Huffman, who was coming off his first 125 Supercross title. Huffman was probably their most high-profile rider in '95. If you don't count maybe Ryan Hughes, who was still with Pro Circuit Kawasaki. So those two are easily probably the most high-profile rider they had in the stable those years. They also had Honda of Troy, which gave them Mike Craig and I believe Mike Brown, Todd DeHoop maybe. Had to think a little bit about it. They had a fair amount of riders there with those two teams between Pro Circuit and Honda of Troy, but they did not have any other major 250 riders in the class. Jeremy Mcgrath was in on a factory Honda deal. This was the year that Honda went to Fox Racing, so most of the big time riders were locked up with other brands. This is some good looking gear this year. I really like some of the stuff. Again, the graphics are kind of cartoony, but I dig the colors. I really like the team issue gear. I think that's a very good looking color combo. The purple with red that Mike Craig's wearing here. Good looking stuff for sure. I have fairly mixed feelings about these new 909 pants. I do like the color combos. That kind of wine color's pretty. The yellow with the blue logo's good looking. Overall, the colors are good. The new logo, I'm kind of torn on. They kind of warped the AXO logo a little bit. And these kind of weird little circles on the knee. I'm not huge fans of that. But overall styling on it's pretty good. I guess they needed to freshen the look up. It's not my favorite. I actually prefer the 94 look to this. But they weren't bad looking. Now, AXO Sport did pick up a high-profile rider mid-year, because interesting, this is the year that Damon Bradshaw decided halfway through the season he wanted to come out of retirement. He had spent the whole 94 season on the sidelines, and at High Point he ends up coming out and riding for factory Yamaha again. He didn't exactly set the world on fire here in 95. I think a lot of us thought the Beast was going to come back and kick everybody's butt and set the record straight and yada, yada, yada. As I said, I was a big Damon Bradshaw fan, so I was so psyched for this comeback, but it didn't really work out. In 95 here, he was sponsored by AXO and had some good-looking gear. They came out with some good stuff here at the end of the year for Damon to wear, but he wasn't like the same guy. The year off, either the pace really caught up to him and everybody blew past him. It just didn't have the same fire. You know, when he was at the front of the pack in the early 90s, he was, you know, crash or win, kind of like James Stewart, blazing fast. He was never slow. He just would haul ass until he hit the ground. And the new Damon Bradshaw wasn't the same guy. Again, I don't know exactly what happened, but it was certainly great for AXO Sport. Jim Hale was a huge Damon Bradshaw fan, and they had that great partnership in the early 90s there. So during Damon's comeback here in 95 and then subsequently in 97 as well, he was riding for AXO Sport. Good move for the brand, I'm sure, in terms of marketing, but it wasn't what fans of the Beast were hoping for. Couple little quick tidbits here before we leave 1995. There was an all-new Rc3 Boot. Good looking boot. I actually kind of like the looks of this thing, but I never had it. I had the Rc2, and then I had another AXO Sport boot, I don't know, maybe 7 years later, early 2000s. I never had this, but it was a good looking boot overall. And there was an all-new glove this year, the Padlock 2, which is, in my opinion, just freaking hideous. Never had this glove either, and I'm glad I did not. For 1996, Damon Bradshaw was out with Yamaha moving to Honda's model of having Fox as the provider for all of Team Yamaha. So all of the factory Yamaha team that year was in Fox clothing. So Damon was in Fox, and that left Damon Huffman here as the top AXO Sport rider once again. Good looking stuff overall in 96. Maybe I prefer the 95 maybe a little bit. This new 959 pant, to me at least, is not quite as good looking. The colors aren't quite as interesting. It's not a terrible looking pant by any means, but overall I think I do prefer the year before. This is kind of where, at least for my money, AXO Sport maybe starts going down a little bit. Somewhere around this year is when Jim kind of starts losing a little bit of interest in the brand. I think, and it just kind of starts taking a dive. It's not a huge drop off here in 96, but at least for my money, the writing's starting to be on the wall. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't describe any of this stuff as terrible. I don't like this weird, I don't know, flame design on the jerseys. It's, none of it's bad. The AXO Pentagon, to me at this point looks really outdated. Just sticking a new decal on it is pretty boring. Really, the 91 version with the colors way better looking than this version. The new AXO Sport helmets are pretty good looking. You can see some of these ones. I do like this limited one that Larry Ward is using in this ad. Not bad looking stuff overall. Like I said, it's not terrible. It's not Biaffi bad. But I think at this point, as I said, the brand was kind of taking a little bit of a turn as Jim kind of decided to refocus his efforts and started selling off a little bit of the brand and kind of refocusing towards maybe mechanics wear or something that might be of new and of more interest to him at this point. For 1997, the big news at AXO Sport was the return of Damon Bradshaw. Damon had a rather unpleasant ending to his Yamaha career in 1996. Had a big blowout at the last round and had been let go. He had actually had a pretty decent year. It was up front in the early and Supercross, but after that it really went downhill, and things weren't going great. So he got let go at the end of the year. So he was back with Jim Hale in the Manchester Honda privateer effort here. Gear this year, again, not my favorite. The split fire stuff looks pretty good. They were still sponsoring the Pro Circuit team at this point. So they had the rookie Ricky Carmichael in their gear, and that would turn out to be very advantageous because Ricky would come out and kick everybody's butt this year in the outdoors. Damon Huffman was still in AXO Sport, so they had a fair amount of high-profile riders this year. But I don't really like this gear very much. They added a all-new AXO Sport logo, which to me, very Italian influence. Just kind of a, I don't know. I never really liked this look, and you'll hear from here on out. Really, I don't really like any of this stuff that much. The colors are still pretty bold, but the designs are not really to my liking. As much as I disliked 97, I really dislike 98 even more. This stuff is, I mean, again, it's not terrible. I just don't really care for this new logo, the weird little A thing going on here. The colors, not bad, yellow, red, green, same basic stuff. Nothing crazy like it was in the early 90s. People were, in general, all the gear companies were getting more subdued, going with less flashy colors. You still had the Pro Circuit team this year in AXO Sport, and Damon Huffman was their highest profile rider with the retirement of Damon Bradshaw at the end of the season. Sad to see Damon go. He would come back a couple years later for Arena Cross, but this is really the end of the road as far as his true pro career. Not great stuff. Again, like I said, AXO Sport is on a downward spiral, in my opinion, at this point. By 1999, Jim Hale was out at AXO Sport, having sold the company back to Italy. The brand really had taken a bit of a turn as he was becoming less interested, and by 99, as I said, he's out and I'm out. I don't like really any of this stuff for 99. I think it's all just terrible. Don't like the designs of the pants, the jersey, any of this stuff. It's just not my cup of tea. They still did have the AXO Pentagon in the stable, still around, thoroughly probably in need of a refresh. Although, interestingly, it does look better than its replacement here on the right. I don't know. That's even worse. So at least the Pentagon is classic looking. Now, there wasn't all terrible for this year. The Rc4 Boot's pretty decent looking boot. Like I said, I bought, this might be the one I had. I had like one around 2000 or so. I didn't really like the boot. I found it to be very stiff and uncomfortable, and just didn't really suit with me at all. By this point, I kind of transitioned to Alpine Stars, and I ended up selling this boot a little bit after I got it. I wore it a couple times and hated it, and got rid of it. Now, they did have a cool helmet this year. They had this carbon version of their AXO Sport helmet. To me, at least, this is the only thing that was still cool in their stable. Guys like Kevin Windham were still wearing their helmets, so that was pretty badass. But overall, AXO Sport really is just a shell of this former self after Jim got out. They still would sponsor, I think, maybe the Primal Impulse team here in the early 2000s, but they really were no longer much of a factor here in the U.S., and very shortly they'd be basically off the map here in this country. So kind of a sad way for a really awesome brand to kind of fizzle out. AXO Sport really, as far as AXO Sport USA, AXO Sport America, really only had about a 15-year run there where it was really a powerful influencer. But when it shined very bright and was hugely influential. It just when things went south, they went south quickly. So no offense if you lug this stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s, but it really wasn't much to my liking. Now, if you like this stuff, make sure you check out some of my other videos. I did one on Fox Racing, which looked back at Fox from their introduction until, I think, about 2000 or so. If you like this thing, let me know in the comments below, and I'll probably do one on JT Racing, maybe Answer as well, Thor, if I get around to it, O'Neill. There's a lot of great stuff here to mine in the gear industry over the years. And I love hearing the feedback. Like I said, if you disagree with me, you think I'm crazy, let me know. You can certainly hit me up on social media. I read all the comments and I respond to people, so feel free to let me know what you think. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. That's at Tony Blazer. That's TonyBlazier. I also write at PompOMX, so I wrote a long-form history of this as well, where myself and Mathis went through a lot of these ads and wonder what we both thought of them. It's always interesting to hear another opinion. You can find that at pulpmx.com under the Classic Steel tab. I did one for Fox and JT and Answer as well, so if you like this thing, make sure you check that out. There's also about 140 classic bike reviews you can check out there on the website. All kinds of good stuff if you're into classic motocross. I certainly hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like I said, if you could share it out on social media, I'd really appreciate it. Help grow our community here. And until we meet again, keep the rubber side down. Peace.